To help create sentence variety in your writing, use your sentence joining chart. Your sentence joining chart will help you use coordinating conjunctions to create compound sentences, transitional expressions to create a different type of compound sentences, and subordinating conjunctions to help create complex sentences. Here are some examples of coordinating conjunctions used to make compound sentences. Ricardo plays basketball and his brother plays tennis. Ricardo's brother plays tennis, but Ricardo hates tennis. Ricardo and his brother are active in sports, so they are in good shape. Notice in these compound sentences that a comma comes after the first independent clause and a coordinating conjunction comes before the second independent clause. Here are some examples of transitional expressions used to create compound sentences. Molly failed her math test. Furthermore, she received a D on her history paper. Molly has done poorly this semester. However, she plans to do better next semester. Molly needs to attend all of her classes. Meanwhile, she needs to study outside of class. Molly will change her academic habits. For example, she will seek a tutor for advice on her papers. Molly will change her academic habits. As a result, her grades will improve. Molly will improve her chances of success in school. Likewise, she will improve her chances of success in life. Notice that in each of these compound sentences, the semicolon comes after the first independent clause. For example, Molly will change her academic habits, semicolon. After the semicolon comes a transitional expression followed by a comma. Each of these sentences ends with an independent clause, such as, she will seek a tutor for advice on her papers. Here are some examples of subordinating conjunctions being used to create complex sentences. Although we worked all night, we did not finish on time. We did not finish on time, although we worked all night. Before we could finish, our time ran out. Our time ran out before we could finish. Because our time ran out, we could not finish. We could not finish because our time ran out. Notice that when a sentence begins with a subordinating conjunction, a comma comes after the the entire dependent clause. And an independent clause follows the comma. On the other hand, when a complex sentence begins with an independent clause, it is followed directly by the subordinating conjunction and the rest of the dependent clause. Notice that the words and phrases in each vertical column on your sentence joining chart have similar purposes, even if they are not used in the same types of sentences. There are coordinating conjunctions and transitional expressions that add or join. There are coordinating conjunctions, transitional expressions, and subordinating conjunctions that show contrast or alternative. There are transitional expressions and subordinating conjunctions that show time or sequence. And there are coordinating conjunctions, transitional expressions, and subordinating conjunctions that show cause or effect. Let's take a closer look at words and phrases on the sentence joining chart that share a common purpose. Let's first look at words and phrases that add or join ideas together, highlighting the words and phrases that are most commonly used. These include and, in addition, additionally, and also. The sentence, Chang plays running back for the football team and he plays saxophone in the band, can be written in this format. Chang plays running back for the football team. In addition, he plays saxophone in the band. Or, additionally, he plays saxophone in the band. Or, also, he plays saxophone in the band. You see here that you have a variety of ways of saying the same thing. Note that these ideas can be expressed in a simple sentence. Chang plays running back for the football team and saxophone in the band. This is a simple sentence because it consists of just an independent clause. Now let's look at words and phrases that show contrast, highlighting the words and phrases that are most commonly used. These include but, yet, however, nevertheless, although, and even though. Kenyatta has her license, but she rarely drives. Here, the coordinating conjunction but can be replaced with the coordinating conjunction yet. Kenyatta has her license, yet she rarely drives. Using a transitional expression, the same ideas can be expressed, as in the sentence, Kenyatta has her license, however, she rarely drives. The transitional expression, however, can be replaced by the transitional expression nevertheless to convey the same meaning. Finally, these ideas can be expressed in a complex sentence. Although Kenyatta has her license, she rarely drives. Notice in this sentence that the dependent clause comes before the independent clause. Remember that if a complex sentence begins with a dependent clause, a comma needs to come after the dependent clause. However, if a complex sentence begins with an independent clause, no comma is needed, as in the sentence, Kenyatta rarely drives, although she has her license. The subordinating conjunction although can be replaced by the subordinating conjunction even though, and the sentence will mean the same thing. Remember that the coordinating conjunctions yet and but, the transitional expressions nevertheless and however, and the subordinating conjunctions even though and although have the same purposes, although they are used in different types of sentences. Now let's take a look at some transitional expressions and subordinating conjunctions that show time or sequence, highlighting a few that are most frequently used. First, eventually, later, meanwhile, at that moment, after, before, until, when, and while. Isabella hopes to become a doctor. First, she will go to medical school. Isabella will go to medical school. Later, she hopes to become a doctor. These first two sentences are compound sentences using transitional expressions. Notice how the independent clauses are switched between the first sentence and the second sentence. Now let's look at some complex sentences. After Isabella goes to medical school, she hopes to become a doctor. Isabella hopes to become a doctor after she goes to medical school. Before Isabella becomes a doctor, she will go to medical school. Isabella will go to medical school before she becomes a doctor. Remember that if you begin a complex sentence with a dependent clause, a comma comes right after the entire dependent clause. But if you begin a complex sentence with an independent clause, you do not need a comma. All of these sentences, whether the ideas are joined by transitional expressions or subordinating conjunctions, mean essentially the same thing. Let's look at the words meanwhile and while. Zoe mowed the lawn. Meanwhile, her husband weeded the garden. Zoe's husband weeded the garden. Meanwhile, Zoe mowed the lawn. When you use the word meanwhile, the independent clauses can be switched around. While Zoe mowed the lawn, her husband weeded the garden. While Zoe's husband weeded the garden, Zoe mowed the lawn. When you use the word while in a complex sentence to show that two actions occur at the same time, the two ideas can be switched around. As always, a complex sentence can begin with a dependent clause or an independent clause. Let's look at the words eventually and until. Marta practiced her dance moves every day. Eventually, she mastered them. Marta practiced her dance moves every day until she mastered them. Until Marta mastered her dance moves, she practiced them every day. Now, let's take a look at the transitional expression "at that moment" and the word "when." The running back dove into the end zone. At that moment, the crowd erupted into cheers. When the running back dove into the end zone, the crowd erupted into cheers. The crowd erupted into cheers when the running back dove into the end zone. Finally, let's look at coordinating conjunctions, transitional expressions, and subordinating conjunctions that show cause or effect. First, we will examine words that show cause. For, since, because, if, as long as, unless. You will notice that there are no transitional expressions that show cause. Jamal gets good grades for he studies hard. Jamal gets good grades since he studies hard. These sentences mean the same thing. The coordinating conjunction for and the subordinating conjunction since both show cause. However, the first sentence is a compound sentence and needs a comma. The second sentence is a complex sentence that begins with an independent clause. Therefore, it does not need a comma. In the second sentence, the subordinating conjunction because can replace the subordinating conjunction since. As always, the dependent clause can come before the independent clause, as in, because Jamal studies hard, he gets good grades. In this case, a comma will separate the dependent clause from the independent clause. Other subordinating conjunctions can be used to create sentences with similar meanings. If Jamal studies hard, he will get good grades. As long as Jamal studies hard, he will get good grades. You can use the subordinating conjunction unless to create a sentence with a slightly different meaning. Unless Jamal studies hard, he will get poor grades. Or, Jamal will get poor grades unless he studies hard. Now we'll look at coordinating conjunctions, transitional expressions, and subordinating conjunctions that show effect. So, or, therefore, consequently, thus, as a result, for this reason, hence, ultimately, so that. You'll notice that while none of the transitional expressions show cause, they all show effect. Jamal studies hard, so he gets good grades. Jamal studies hard, therefore he gets good grades. The transitional expression therefore can be replaced by the transitional expression consequently, thus, as a result, for this reason, hence, or ultimately. The same ideas can be expressed using the subordinating conjunction so that, as in the sentence, Jamal studies hard so that he gets good grades. Or, so that he gets good grades, Jamal studies hard. Once again, you will see that the same ideas can be expressed in a variety of ways, with a coordinating conjunction, with a transitional expression, with a subordinating conjunction. A sentence with a slightly different meaning can be created with the coordinating conjunction or. Jamal needs to study hard or he will get poor grades. Use your sentence joining chart and what you have learned from watching this video to complete the following assignment. Bring the completed assignment to next class.